Jump right in, brother. Turn off the.
Gotcha. I had audio.
Alright. So,
Good.
our Skype is still rocking and rolling. It says we're live. Okay, so I see the both of us up on the screen, so we're winning
Good.
already. Doing much better than my live stream yesterday that was just full of issues and problems.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Technology is supposed to make our lives easier and better, right?
Supposedly, brother. Supposedly. But anyways, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to
My
join
busy
us here.
quarantine, stay-at-home lifestyle here, but yeah, thank you for taking the time of your day to talk and share as we're far away, but through technology, a blessing that we can connect. Even we connect more like this, and we actually get to go out fishing when our paths rarely cross throughout the year.
Which is crazy because there are times when we're both in Southern California, we're both in the Midwest, and right now I'm in Long Beach and you're in Minnesota.
Minnesota,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Good old Brainerd.
Yeah, Brainerd, Minnesota.
Rad. So
it's a nice day out.
Yeah, we'll just give a couple minutes here before we really jump into this new episode of the BBD podcast. This is episode 11, featuring my man Troy. Looks like my man Jose is in the house. Kyle from Arizona. AZ is in the house. You got AZ Roots as well.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, man. So
the hookup.
Yeah. Shout out to Ben at the hookup. So Ben provided this little care package here, guys, of topwater baits because I have been pretty pumped to get my topwater fishing going in this 2020 post-spawn season. Okay, that's coming up pretty quickly. So got $100 worth here of super dope mega bass topwaters. All right, that's gonna go out to one of our lucky live viewers today, and every $5 donation to the channel will be entered for a chance to win this super dope package. So shout out to Ben out there in AZ, and shout out to everybody that is joining us here today. I'm going to leave those up there for inspiration for you guys. And then we're going to put the instructions to enter the donation here in the chat box. But for the most part, this is just a live look into this Big Bass Streams podcast here with my friend and colleague Troy Lindner. We won't really be fielding any questions. We'll be doing some more live streams in the future of that nature for you guys with and without Troy. So make sure you guys subscribe to the Big Bass Streams channel. Make sure you guys subscribe to my new channel here, and make sure you guys subscribe to Troy's channel. All of those links are in the description below. Looking forward to featuring Troy as a content maker, producer through the Big Bass Streams channel, and he's been supportive of the project and the movement since I've known him. So big shout out to you for that, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been an exciting time over the last few years to see the growth of this, see how you built that up, and it's awesome. Yeah. Just your hat says it all. I mean, that was years ago, and to see how many people you inspire across the world now. Australia, Spain, France, Canada, Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota.
Yeah, man. It's pretty wild, and I think that's really the reason why I was excited to get you on this podcast here, because you can relate to so much of what I've been doing for the last couple years, especially with the multi-species stuff, the cross-country stuff, even the competitive aspect, fishing the Bassmaster Opens, and your international adventures. So that's why I really suggest my viewers go check out your YouTube channel, because it's the stuff that you've been doing is dope, man. And
thank you.
And the fact that you've got such a strong body of work that's so diverse, right? And, I mean, you fish for carp, largemouth, smallmouth, perch, zander, you name it. You're like me, man. If it swims, you want to catch it. I was there for your first yellowtail. That was cool.
That was fun. That was a very fun day. I haven't been out for yellowtail since.
Yeah, well, I
got spoiled that day.
I got a little 13-foot Boston whaler that might be able to reach that zone if I get brave enough and get everything dialed in. So we'll be doing some of that. But I really want to introduce you to my audience that aren't aware of you, who you are, and why. Like your friendship, your insight, and honestly, your respect means a lot to me, and that extends out into your family. Because as your name obviously shows us, you come from an incredibly gifted fishing family. You want to tell us a little bit about that in particular? Like for some of these guys, especially the newer guys, right? They might not be familiar with like that in-fisherman influence from, gosh, when were those books published?
Yeah, going back old school, in fish.
Was that the late 70s that the line of books that we were looking at in your dad's den was first published?
70, yes, I think 75, 76.
Bro, that's wild. I mean, that predates me.
Yeah, the first fishing segments. I think I'll go back to tell a little bit about my history, but I think it would be interesting when was it last summer, we were looking at this winter, I showed some magazines from like the mid 70s, and it was temperature range. It's the exact same temperature range that we talk about for spawning fish, the structure, the contours, cover, and this is in the mid 70s when you didn't have the internet and you had to go out there. And how'd you figure out the temperature? Well, you drop it in the water, and when sonar was just starting to come out, and those principles still apply today, and that was the fishing segments that actually predated in Fisherman Media Network. And my dad and my uncle started, they actually started pouring, they started pouring tackle and jigs and making baits in their garage, and they would summer up in Hayward, Wisconsin, and growing up in the streets of Chicago. And my dad knew he wanted to make a living in the fishing industry. He knew he just wants to make a living fishing. And he went down to Texas to go guide down there. He went in a station wagon and he towed his boat down there, slept in his car, and went down there and then the guides were kind of this in group, and he was on the outside, and especially being a Yankee going down there at the time, but he finally, got the clients there because he was just smacking the fish down there, doing really well. And then when he came, back up to the Midwest, and I'm skipping over some things, but then he came back up living in the North, and then went down and fished the first years of the Bassmaster and won a couple Bassmasters and fished in a couple classics. And back then, what they did, Ray Scott would be on a private plane. You had a few rods, and I know you would love to do something like this. You didn't know where you're going to fish in like the country. You didn't know where you're going to go. So you show up with 10 other guys. It's like him, Bill Dance, Johnny Moore. I mean, you're talking the early days, and they're on a private plane.
And some of these guys might not know who your dad is, so put it out there. Who's your dad?
Yeah, Al Lindner, and that guy. That's a good pre-spawn walleye right there. Yeah. Nice. And you hear those stories because that's not going to happen anymore. I mean, it can't, like those days like that. Yes, smallmouth. That's a good one. That's one of his favorite fish to catch, if not the favorite, smallmouth bass. So you'd rig up a few rods. You'd have a little bit. You could bring like 20 pounds of tackle. You went on the plane. This is the Bassmaster Classic. Now you remember they just had the 50th anniversary of this. The big stage. It wasn't like it back then. Private plane. They took everybody. They're flying over lakes. They land in a little airstrip. They get out, and you got to fish the Classic on a lake you've never seen. You have no information. You got to hit the ground running. And that was, the early days of tournament fishing. Then he left tournament fishing at the exact same time as Bill Dance and Johnny Morris did. And Johnny Morris told him at the time, I forgot to quote him, something like Johnny said, he's like, you know what, guys? You guys are going to go do your TV stuff or try that. Like, I'm going to go start a tackle store. And then they're like, all right, good luck with your tackle store. Tackle store business wasn't really lucrative, but I think Bass Pro Shops is doing a pretty good job nowadays. And then he started him and his brother started in Fisherman Network that led to the magazines, the radio, everything. They sold that 20 years ago And then my cousin James and my cousin Dan, they started Lindner Media Productions and do a whole bunch of TV shows right now. They do I forgot last year 63 original 30-minute original TV episodes, and that's pretty much in the open water Midwest season. So they do on the Ontario Experience, Angling Buzz Open Water, Angling Buzz Ice, Fishing Edge, Angling Edge, and Lund's Ultimate Fishing. So they keep pretty busy. So
your uncle just got recently inducted into one of the Fishing Hall of Fames, didn't he?
Yeah, Uncle Ron. I'm actually in his house. He's in Florida right now.
Okay.
I'm here by myself. And Uncle Ron, congratulations. He is now going to be inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. And actually, I was just on the phone with him about 30 minutes ago, and I think he's 85 years old, and he's going fishing. He's going shore fishing for bass in Florida as we're talking right now.
That's so dope, man. And for those of the guys that might have missed it, I actually got to spend a day in the Dream Machine with you and your dad Al last summer in Minnesota, and I've actually left a link to that video. There's actually 2 videos from that day in the description below, so if you guys get a chance, go watch those. But it was a trip for me, man, to sit there in my boat and watch a man that greatly influenced me as a young angler doing exactly what I watched him doing, with that same kind of energy and confidence and execution. Like, dude, he was a hammer, and he's not a spring chicken. And then that wind picked up and it got ugly on Mille Lacs, and we were surfing. Dude, your dad was just on the back deck, posted, leaning up against the big water like it was no big deal, man. And that was so rad for
that was fun. That was a lot of fun. He had some nice walleye. He stuck into a couple really nice walleye there.
Absolutely.
As well as that muskie that I think, does that still hunt? You still think about that one?
Man, all the time. I'm hoping I get back up there and get a shot at a fish like that.
We almost hit that thing with if you haven't seen the video, we came over we almost hit it in the trolling as we're drifting, and we're looking at it, and the fish is just sitting there in the cabbage, there's a cabbage stalk, and this muskie just sitting there.
Clear as day.
We're both looking at it.
Bluebird skies. It's 11:30 in the morning, so we could see everything. 20, 30-foot viz, and it was sitting on the surface, so there was just no mistaking it. And I got a 53 after I left there, and this thing was definitely longer than my 53. I don't think it was definitely as girthy as my PB, but dude, it was the longest muskie I've ever seen.
Yeah, the Mille Lacs, those muskie there, if you look over the history of some of those that are caught there, and the ones like that one that washed up on shore dead, that was, what was it, 60, I don't know what it was, 60 inches or some ridiculous amount, but the genetics of the Mille Lacs muskie, they are absolutely huge. They go this way, and then they go that way. I mean, they're both just and they got a lot of food there, and they got a lot of space to feed and roam.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things about being in the boat with your dad for me was I got to ask him a bunch of questions, right? Just like any other fanboy or somebody that was greatly influenced as a youngster like I was. And I mean, there's so much I want to go over, even just from that experience. That I could fill up a whole day, let alone an hour podcast. But that scientific approach to fishing really set in on me through those early in-fisherman TV shows. I'd wake up at 4:35 in the morning here on the West Coast to catch, and the fact that everybody was a talented multi-species angler really appealed to me. And obviously it's stuck true to this day, and I feel like it's definitely made me a better bass fisherman, especially on the trophy side of things, for both largemouth and smallmouth bass now. And it was crazy to go into your dad's, man cave and office there and see that original set of in-fisherman publications from the late 70s that you're talking about, with all of this pertinent info. All this info that I see a lot of people try to recycle and teach people now. Dude, your family was doing that fundamental work for the culture going back, 5 decades now? That's
it would be 50 years, I think, something like that. Yeah, the seasonal movements, it's right there in the first fishing, very first fishing segment, fishing report. It's pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, water temperature. It's for all the different species, and it's there. I mean, we're still talking. I mean, that was before I was even born, and how they figured that out, and how to figure out drops, weeds, cover, and multi-species, not only bass, but northern pike, muskie, walleye, smallmouth bass, and largemouth bass, both.
And panfish, baby.
And panfish, America's number one. Is it crappie? Like America's most popular.
If it's not,
fish.
It should be.
Yeah, and to your point, like the multi-species aspect of it, and that's a lot in the Midwest. Especially here in Minnesota, we just kind of fish for whatever swimming. I mean, there's hardcore walleye people, hardcore bass people, mainly walleye here, and I think a lot of the walleye fishermen, I think it's easier for them to switch to bass fishing than bass fishing to walleye, because the technicalities in bass fishing, but it's different because you're not, bass fishing, it's a lot of visual things if you're fishing in the bank and sonar like that, and walleye sometimes just their nature is a little bit different. But if you go walleye fishing for a while, you can take a lot of the what you learn there and apply it to bass fishing. And to your point, it makes you the more fish and the more different fish you fish for and catch, the better you are overall. Absolutely, without question.
Yeah, 1,000%, man. It's gonna lead me to a couple of questions here that I always ask all of my guests here on the BBD podcast. First one is, with all of this experience that you've had, all the different kinds of fish, tell me about the one that got away that still haunts you the most. Break it down, man. Like, where were you at? Like, what were you trying to fish for? How did the disaster unfold?
I gotta think of there's probably a few muskie. Muskie, I can tell you about. First thing comes to head is muskie, because they're a heartbreaker. And filming the Ontario experience, you can see it in season 1. I was up at Lake of the Woods, and I think that was out of Witch Bay Camp. It's on film, and I make a cast. I'm throwing a Huddleston, which fantastic for muskie, and well, good and bad. This is what happened. They came up, and I didn't have the hook right, set back too far. Came back, and you see it on film. You see this huge boil, and it comes back. The bait, half of the bait, bit the back of the bait, grabbed the tail, huge. One of those low. It would have been a personal best for me, like a low 50. And that one, I mean, I never had it hooked, but it struck the bait, and that's what the amazing thing is muskie. You'll see, you talk to muskie anglers, anybody that's even bass fishing at a muskie come in, they remember those fish. Those fish just get burned into your memory. And the way you can have your lure come in, the little feathers on the back of a bucktail, and the muskie just come up, and they're right there, right in the back of it, and they don't eat it, or they mouth the bait, or they start to mouth the water as they're chasing your bait, like that. And this one just grabbed the tail. You're talking a 50-plus inch fish, and you're talking an 8-inch swim bait, and it just grabbed like the back little part of it could easily inhale the bait, but they probably know so well over the years to just, for whatever reason, I mean, you're talking a Huddleston isn't that big. It just grabbed the back. It could just inhale the whole thing, but it just grabbed the back, and then it tore the bait, and I come back, and you see the tails ripped off. You can see that on the Ontario experience. You got it all on film. And then my reaction afterwards, I didn't swear out loud, but that was one that I'll never forget. And it's and it makes you want to go back for more,
Yeah, man.
And I wasn't upset. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, it's just exciting. That adrenaline rush you get from fishing, whether it's bass and smallmouth, walleye, catfish, carp. I mean, it's so much fun, and if it ever goes away, I'll just, my time on this earth is done if that doesn't excite me anymore.
I feel you, brother. I feel you, man. Those muskies are definitely a special fish, and
yeah,
I'm glad we got to share that experience of almost running of mid-50s plus up.
And that's one that we didn't even follow or bait, and that's the mystery and the incredibleness. I don't know if that's a word, of muskie, is that fish. We just saw that fish just sitting in the water. Didn't chase our bait, nothing. It was just sitting there. Well, not even swimming, not even chasing, just seeing that fish in its natural habitat just by itself, and in that we're talking about it, and we'll be talking about it for years.
So rad, man.
Yeah.
So let's go back into, your whole family dynamic, because you're really the only angler I know that fishes at a pretty high level that comes from like a fishing pedigree, right? You see it in other sports. Let's take, for example, the late great Kobe Bryant. His dad played in the league, was a professional basketball player.
I didn't know.
Yeah. That's where the original Kobe Bean was. He played for the Sixers. I forgot who else he played for, but you that's pretty common in other sports, right? You have sons following in the footsteps of their parents, and in some cases they surpass their parents. Like it's Steph Curry, right? Surpassed Steph Curry as far as a shooter and just his impact on the game. But then you have guys like Michael Jordan Jr., who didn't, pan out and and had to live in the shadow of literally the greatest basketball player in the eyes of many.
No pressure.
Right. So you're like the only one that I know that has this dynamic in trying to establish yourself as an angler and your own person. Like what is that like? Good and bad, right?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, some of the, well, you have Scott, come to mind, Scott Martin, Roland Martin.
Go. True.
And
my bad, Scott.
But it's only, but you look at Johnny Morris' son. I think he mainly hunts. As far as I know, Hank Parker's sons, I think they hunt more. They're more interested in hunting than fishing. And some of the people that grew up in the time period when my dad and my uncle did, and it's. I grew up in fishing. I grew up in the fishing family, so I don't know any other lifestyle than what I have here, and it's interesting. I mean, you get, it's trying to live up to what he accomplished at my age. When he was my age, is much more than I've already accomplished, but he laid the groundwork, for everything, that I want to do, and he gives me a lot of advice, and I think some people, trying to live up. I'm not trying to live up to what he did or surpass what he did or anything. And he's always been supportive, cutting my own path and kind of finding out my own niche, especially going out west, and which has been awesome. Learning, so much from the anglers that I've fished with out there, and seeing, I missed that really big trophy bass thing, at Casitas and Castaic. I was there when I started fishing. I just got on the tail end of it, where you go to Casitas and you would see a 10 to 13 pound fish every single day, just sitting in a tree, or so you go out there. And I never caught one there that big, but getting away, getting out of my comfort zone, moving out west allowed me to experience some of that, the saltwater stuff that, that I've been exposed to, like the yellowtail stuff and that, some of the sand, the calico stuff. I could have stayed back in the Midwest in Brainerd, but I chose after college. I went to Arizona State and then moved with some buddies, moved out to LA, and have been pretty much out there, for the most part ever since. I come back during the summers, open water season in Minnesota and Canada, and then travel at other parts of the year. But
you call the West Coast home, and specifically LA now.
Yeah. LA, my roots are Minnesota. Now. Yeah, Minnesota roots. Deep, strong Minnesota roots, Midwest. And I almost call the last few years, I almost call Ontario, Canada, my second home. I spent so much time up there, like at the fishing lodges, filming the Ontario experience, and it's been wonderful up there. Amazing fishing. There's so many lakes up there. Ontario, I believe Ontario has, 1/4 of the world's freshwater.
That's crazy.
Is in Ontario.
And that's a province in Canada, right?
One of the, not all, just the province itself. 1/4, I think, of the world's freshwater has something to the order of 250,000 lakes.
Wow.
And the fishing there, you could just roam and just fish forever up there.
So, here's a question for you. As you have such strong Midwest roots, but have spent so much time on our fisheries here in the West Coast, what do you feel is a stronger influence when you're exploring new bodies of water like you are in Ontario? Is it the Minnesota Troy or is it the West Coast Troy?
Probably more well, it's Minnesota because of the walleye that are up there. You're mainly fishing walleye, muskie, pike, and some smallmouth bass, and you don't necessarily like in Southern California. You don't need the finesse. Fishing the Colorado River and the finesse stuff that we have to do, and then but the other side of it, the big swim bait things that I've learned on the West Coast, I have applied them to the pike and muskie with good success. And so from that, which I probably wouldn't have had that, as well as bass fishing here, like taking a big swim bait, you go to the Gull Lake here and other lakes, and you can go to Minnetonka and some lakes across the Midwest. Go throw a big swim bait next to some docks. Go this summer, throw a big swim bait around some weed beds, and you'd be surprised at the size of the largemouth bass that will hit a 10-inch, 8 to 12-inch swim bait. You'd be shocked, and I've seen it here. It's real, sometimes you're getting 3-pound, you're getting 3 to 5 pound largemouth bass, and for the Midwest, it's a very big fish. But you're able to trigger those fish in a way that they don't see. They have no problem hitting a big crappie or hitting a big bluegill. They're gonna hit a big swim bait, no problem. And when you think, especially in smallmouth bass, and in my seminars, I mentioned the time when we were on Lake Texoma. And maybe you can tell a little bit about the size of the bait you were throwing and the size of the smallmouth bass that were crushing that.
Yeah, Troy and I fished a bass. What was that?
Texas Team Trail.
Texas Team Trail event, which is one of the bigger team events in the state of Texas, where they take bass fishing pretty seriously.
Yes.
200 plus boat fields. I think they're actually in the excess of like 250 to 300 boats on Texoma. It's my first time up there. Mm-hmm. And I got up there for a half afternoon of pre-fishing with Troy as this crazy Midwest storm set in on us, and like thunder and lightning and rain and wind. And I hooked a giant striper on this main lake point that I actually ended up having come unbuttoned, had another one roll on it on that same cast at the boat, and came up with like a literal quarter-size striper scale. That's a big-ass striper. But that was really the only practice we got. And then we rolled into tournament day the next day, and of course, bluebird. Storms passed.
Perfect swim bait weather.
Post frontal, right? Yeah. There's entire creeks that were blown out. But the main lake still had like 20-foot viz probably.
Yeah, and still very clear.
Yeah, and the game plan was Troy was going to try to catch our keepers, and I was going to swing and see what I could do with the big bait. And I was throwing a 9-inch hinkle shad at the time. And holy crap, man, if I had got hooks into 4 or 5 of those smallies that came up on this thing so hot, I mean, they're 4 to 6 pound class, easy.
Yeah, we would have won it.
Oh, we would have won it by a landslide. I think.
By a lot, yeah. And the smallies were hitting the bait. I remember you rolling. You're like, "There's one." Boom! He's like, "You missed it!" And when they come, you hit it again. You're like, "You gotta be kidding!"
They're just that off, right, from the conditions. But they were so excited about that presentation. We were so close. But I did get one on the hinkle shad.
Yeah.
I got a nice like mid 5.5 or so.
Yeah, that was a big fish.
Largemouth. But man, if I had executed on all of those engagements on top of the one keeper that we weighed in smallmouth wise, like we would have blown it away.
Yeah.
But yeah, those applications are definitely there, and I want to make sure the audience doesn't get turned off by the fact that you're talking about other species other than bass, that like the walleye, the muskies, the pike, the perch. Because they might not know that you fish these high-level tournaments, and you can't do that and have success like you have if you don't know what you're doing. So there's this really weird notion by some people in fishing cultures that if you do more than one thing, that means you're not good at what I like to do. And I see that a lot in bass fishing. Oh, he's just a walleye guy that dabbles with bass fishing or whatnot. It just... That mindset has always perplexed me. It's like, what? Like, no, if anything, the best fishermen that I know are all around guys that can catch any fish.
And yeah, that's very true. When you look at walleye fishing, for example, and when I'm looking at looking at my sonar, I'm looking at the hummingbird, and I'm looking at where the walleye are. Many times they're blending in with the bottom, and it almost looks like a stump, or it's not even a stump. You're just looking at it, and you're like, gosh, and there's no separation in the sonar because they're just belly to the bottom. And bass do the exact same thing. And that's why when I'm going places like I don't know, Havasu or going to other lakes, and I'm looking at some of these rock flats or other places fishing for bass, either smallmouth or largemouth, and I'm looking for the exact same thing. And the things I've learned from walleye fishing, I apply directly for that. You know, when you're walleye fishing, you're really looking at your sonar a lot. And bass fishing, you pretty much just, you know, beat the bank for the most part in most waters and do really well. But going out away from the bank and looking, really reading your sonar and looking for those nuances in the thick weed beds, identifying what a fish is, or have a good guess at what something that would look like a bass in a weed bed or sitting on the bottom, you know, and dropping something down on that fish. And I've learned that, you know, from walleye fishing, I've learned a lot how to become a better bass fisherman by fishing walleye.
Tell 'em, preach, brother, preach. So let's talk about your biggest influence, because you've had the luxury of having some incredible ones literally in your own household. Um, Give me your top two guys, you know, and maybe it's not somebody in your family. I don't know.
Top influence. Well, my I'd say number one, my father influence. You know, just as you know what he's taught me for fishing and in life, both. But I would, you know, apart from me, you know, my parents have had such a strong. I would say, you know, all around, you know, my mother, the strength that my mother has.
Yes.
I would say, sorry, Dad. You know, for a tough woman, the toughest person I've ever known. She's had, you know, 2 open heart surgeries. I mean, where they literally saw open, crack your ribs open, and work on your heart. She's had that twice. You know,
Wow.
and she's not a spring chicken. She's old, and she actually had a 3rd heart surgery to go in. 3, you know, 2 open heart. Another one, she beat breast cancer. And you know, to see, you know, that when I complain about something, and I'm like, oh, geez, you know, what she grew up on a farm, you know, didn't have hardly anything growing up, and the things she went through, it's like, geez, I can't complain about anything. And some, you know, she reminds me about some of that. She's like, is it, you know, yeah, I don't think she means sarcasm, but I'm like, are you trying to be sarcastic? It's like,
Your mom is
but I
dope,
think
man.
you know, my mother, you know, I think the strength and you know, the love and everything that I had from her, you know, is I think probably number one in my life.
Rad. That's
You
super
know,
cool. All right, here's a question for you. Obviously, you are closer to my generation. Obviously, I consider you my generation and how we grew up and consumed fishing content.
yeah,
It's definitely different than it is today, obviously, right? We have these
yep,
discussions between the two of us all the time. So, back when your dad and your uncle and the rest of the Lindner media family was putting all of this work into publish this content that was so hard to earn and gain, and they had to do it from scratch
mm-hmm,
and dive into the science and the field work and the long hours of observation and research, and come up with these hypotheses and go out there and test them, like there was filtering mechanisms in place, right? Like no one's gonna publish a book for you or put you in a magazine or on the cover or on a TV show where
yeah,
people have investments, like as far as time and money and resources. Like they're not gonna just let a Joe Schmo or anybody have a platform to spew something if it hasn't been validated time and time
mm-hmm,
again in some form. And
yeah,
now these days, I mean, look at this. Like they'll let anybody have a YouTube platform, and they could talk
mm-hmm,
about whatever they want. And uh, it's like the complete opposite. So I feel like there's still a ton of really good information out there, but now there's just like a, a saturation of it, and it's got to
mm-hmm,
be difficult for someone that's new to our sport to wade through it and navigate it and know like what's good or what's not, or if this is going to be relevant to me or what's not, or I mean,
mm-hmm.
there's just an ignorance level, right? Because they're just overwhelmed by so much of it. Uh, from your opinion, do you prefer the way it used to be or the way it is?
I think both are good, and I think, it's, when my dad and my uncle started that, they sent out mailers to get subscriptions for the new fishing report, and what they did back then, people would actually send cash in the mail and send checks in the mail. That's how you did it, and you would send cash, $10, $20 for, I forgot what the year subscription was, $10 or something, $20, and they got something I forgot how much money. It was like something to the effect of $100,000 back then. In today's dollars, it would be a lot more. And they were just looking at it, and they also didn't have anything published yet. This is the first. They had to create the newsletter, create the content, publish or print it, ship it to all these people from scratch. And well, now you can print on demand. You can do it, but back then it was different. But they filled in those. They said, we got all this coming in, and it was way more than they thought they would get. And they're like, holy shit, we gotta. I don't know if that were their words, but it's almost like, something comes to you, or somebody comes to you with such a great, like, wow, that's a great offer. Like, that's a really big offer, and like all of a sudden, you gotta produce, and they did, and and there's no, you can't go to Google and say how to start a newsletter and print it. But nowadays, which I think it's good now. It's very saturated information. I can't imagine somebody new coming to the sport and going to Google and say how to catch fish, how do I catch and just like, oh my gosh, like there's so much information overload out there. It's got to be very, very difficult. If I wanted to get into something which I've been kind of looking at, like bow hunting, like I just went like, you're looking at bow hunt. Fortunately, being in the outdoor space, for the most part, I know a lot of, I'm exposed to bow hunting, but somebody that didn't know anything about hunting just wanted to get into hunting. It's like, what kind of bow do I want? A compound bow? What's the length? What's this? Like a rod? Like what fishing? And for us, for the most, anybody coming out, get a spinning reel, get a 2500 size spinning reel, 6-inch medium action rod, 8-pound monofilament there. And pretty much you can catch kind of anything, anywhere. And somebody coming into it, looking at all the YouTube channels, it's quite amazing, and it is nice for the people that are passionate about the sport that want to start their own platform. I think that's really good. A lot of them are making their living or making a side business, and they care about fishing, and they're, some of these channels, they're great regional channels. Some get some really good regional information in Wisconsin, in some of the other areas, even around the world in different countries, and look at what you're doing, like in Spain and so. I mean, it's really, really cool for that, because wherever you are, you can almost narrow it down to how to catch bass in Italy, and then boom, and that comes up, how to, go catch Murray cod in Australia, for instance. Like I didn't, know anything about that and shit, and those are kind of extreme examples. For the most part, if somebody just wants to go out and catch sunfish, it's very easy, but the information is just almost too much. I mean, it's just like, back in the day, in TNN Saturday block, you had the TV shows. It was just on Saturday. That's it. You wake up in the morning, boom, 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 like the old cartoon, growing up, you'd have Saturday morning cartoons or after school cartoons, and you had Nickelodeon and maybe Disney Channel. You had just a couple channels. It was really simple. And you subscribe to some magazines. You get fishing facts of fishing. You got some outdoor news, and you had Bassmaster and Fisherman. And it was pretty easy to you could kind of, with a few magazines, you could get into fishing and not be overloaded with information. And now it's just, there's so much stuff out there. There's so many YouTube and a lot of Me Too YouTube channels that I think a lot of the channels don't really care about fishing. And if there wasn't an outlet for them to show off their big fish, and on Instagram, and that they wouldn't be fishing, period, or they'd barely be fishing, they wouldn't care about it, they'd go do something else, and that's the fact. You can tell somebody can go out fishing without caring about all this stuff that we're doing, then that's real. And you see the authenticity in some of the channels, if they're doing some of the stuff for views, and views means there's stuff that they can do that's viral and they're kind of fun to watch and that. But if you're learning, if you're just coming into it, it's tough. Like, do you have to go to Walmart and spend $20? Is that how you get into it? It's like, You know, the amount of videos and everything, it's overwhelming, but it has, I think, allowed new anglers to get into the sport, and with that, to understand the protection of our resources and not taking too many fish out, how to handle fish carefully. You know, that's the other thing where, you know, the delayed mortality of bass and other fish, the way you hold them, how long you hold them, and just trying to be as careful as possible, you know, as well as I think that goes along with just how to catch them, it's how to handle them. You know, you only have to keep, you know, enough fillets to eat. You don't have to just fill your limit, which a lot of people are, they like to get their limit. Did you get your limit? Like, well, you don't have to get your limit. I mean, it's, you know, how many, a lot of times you're just one person, one walleye, two walleye, 18-incher, you know, depending on the slot that you have, you know, that's going to be plenty. You know, I don't know if you need 50 crappies if you're one person, unless you're going to go out fishing once and fill your freezer, but it's, I think, the conservation of it, and the more people that get into it, and the more pressure the lakes get, the more we need to be able to catch these fish, because that's the only way somebody can get hooked on fishing is they have to go out and catch fish, period. If somebody goes out, youth, and does not catch fish, they will lose interest real fast.
Totally.
And if there's no fish to catch, well, then that's going to hurt our sport in many ways.
Yeah, man. Let's touch on some of the youth programs that you're involved in, right? You got these camps going, kind of like I used to watch on TV shows. That, you know, like in Southern California, that kind of culture just doesn't exist. It didn't even when I was growing up. Like, there were no fish camps, man. Like, what the heck?
The Camp Fish, we started, Brad Peterson and I kind of rebooted that a little bit, and that was a camp, if you're unaware of Camp Fish, back in the 80s. It was originally called Camp Danworthy. It was in Walker, Minnesota, and then my Uncle Ron and my dad kind of rebranded it, and marketed it through in Fisherman. It was called Camp Fish, and it ran for a number of years, and it really helped. You look at a lot of people in the industry now, they went to Camp Fish, and some of their best memories, you know, from the early 80s, and I think it closed in about 91. And it was a special time. You go to, I mean, it was this fishing curriculum based on the fish location presentation thing, and youth learned how to make rod. You look back then, you're a 10-year-old kid, and you're learning how to make a rod. You get the rod blink, you tie it, I mean, you spin, they put them in the spinner to dry. I mean, that, and tie your own fly. Then you go out and catch a fish on the fly that you tied, and you go out in the field learning how to use a fly rod. And you can watch a video, but nothing beats that one-on-one interaction live and, you know, in person. Watching a video is great, but camps or something like that, you know, even guided fishing trips, if you're new to fishing, get a guide. Absolutely go out with a guide, and they'll teach, you know, your learning curve is going to go very high. You know, try to learn as much as you can on your own, but hire a guide.
For sure. And it's interesting because here in the West Coast especially, like, there's a stigma about, you know, being associated with the fishing guide as far as, like, trying to learn from somebody and cutting that learning curve. It's like, oh, man, you hired a guide, man, you must be a terrible fisherman, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, how about he's just a lot smarter than you? Like,
yeah.
Like, cutting that learning curve is a real thing, man. And if you pick the right, you know, guide or trainer or whatever they want to call themselves, like, you can really set yourself up to accelerate that learning curve, like you said, and find success quicker. But still, you know, take from it what you will from the experience and build on it into your own style and techniques and ways to fish.
Yeah, I mean, you look at for Olympic athletes. This might be a track athlete, Olympic track athlete. They all have a coach. Every single one of them has a coach, and that, you know, they're learning. You know, somebody from the outside watching you can get better that way. You know, track athletes can probably train on their own, but to have somebody there, and it's kind of an extreme example, but you know, professional sports players, they have a coach. They have somebody, and sometimes they have a personal trainer, nutrition, you know, on the extreme side, but they have somebody helping them get better. And you can watch a lot of videos, but going out in the boat, even if it's once or twice a season or some other area, you know, especially people coming into the sport, and
or if you don't have the time, right?
Or you don't have the time, yeah. and to have somebody put you on the fish. If you have a friend, you guys want to go out and you want to catch a fish, you want to catch a personal best, and you want to remember that day, to go out and not catch anything, that especially when you have limited time, that sucks. And if you're introducing like your son or your daughter to fishing, and you go out with a guide or just hire a guide for a day, I mean, the memories, they're not gonna. I doubt they'll look at you. God, you got to hire a guide, like. But then you can, you can learn what you learn from the guide, and then go out on your own and do it as well. And I don't see anything. A lot of my traveling that I do is self-guided, and that's for some of the areas I go. They don't exist. Like when I went to China, there's no guides. I can't even.
Right.
I'm gonna put that video up soon, and that was just a whole nother. There's nothing in. When I went to Thailand, there's not really any. If you go up in the rivers, there's a guy, but in the city, there's no guy. I mean, it really doesn't exist, and just regionally, if you're going up somewhere, say on vacation, so you go up to the Pacific Northwest and you want to go catch a big salmon, hire a guide. I mean, especially with the regulations, places that are highly regulated, in the time of year, hiring a guide can make sure you don't get an expensive ticket, and they can take you to the great, a great stretch of river. And I haven't, really experienced those big chum salmon. I'd love to do that someday, and I think hiring a guide would be the way to go. I understand how to cast. I know how to cast, but they can be there, take you exactly where to go, and even fine tune the technique for that fish.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You talked about the sports aspect of this thing, and I want to jump into that with you specifically because you also are a personal trainer, right? As far as like working people out and keeping them fit and building their strength and whatnot.
Yeah, when I moved to LA, that was my business. That's how I supported myself for about 15 years. I worked at LA Fitness, 24-hour fitness. I started at the ground floor as just picking up weights, got paid whatever it was, $10 an hour to walk around and put 45 back on. That people would put the 25 dumbbells back in the 25s, and that was, and clean the gym, on the weekends. I worked in the Ocean Park Boulevard out there in Santa Monica. I worked at that 24-hour fitness, learned a lot, and started at the bottom of the fitness industry.
Okay.
And I learned a lot how to make a name for myself in an industry that I had zero connections, didn't know anybody, and had a passion for. And that's the same thing. Anybody looking at getting in the fishing industry to make some money like that, you got to hustle, make connections. And really work and do something a little bit different. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and just like I had in the fitness industry, and I learned a lot, like just self-mailing. Back then I bought the U.S. Postal Service. You could buy subscription lists, so people that subscribe to the Robe Report or other magazines, you can go through and get the people in a zip code and get their addresses and names. And I did this, and then I would send them. I'd go on my computer and I'd create fitness specials, 2 sessions for something, and I would write everybody down, and I got clients that way, and that's how, if you want fishing sponsors, the same thing. If you want sponsors for people getting in the industry or trying to get some of your articles or write for some, you got to approach them and bring something to the table and do something a little bit different, and just keep hustling and expect to get a lot of no's. It's just the nature, not only the nature of fishing, it's just the nature of the world.
Totally, man. It's a great parallel from fishing to business to life in general. So many lessons to be learned from it. But how important is it for anglers? And I really want to touch on this topic with my audience because a lot of people see the fishing styles that we depict on both channels, right? And you see the big baits, the thick lines, the heavy weights, and they want to do this, that, and then they get in the boat with me, and then they can't hang. Like they're literally physically limited because their shoulder gave out, their back hurts, and to be honest, it's most of the time it's from negligence as far as taking care of their bodies and keeping in shape to be able to fish when they have these opportunities. And it's a shame, man, because like every one of those opportunities, I literally would have gave anything for as a youngster coming up. Like all the stuff that I've been doing the last 5-6 years is stuff I never thought was possible.
Mm-hmm.
A young, broke kid that grew up in La Puente, like that. None of this stuff could have been further from my world. So it's been really important for me to stay as fit as I can be, just so I can maintain like throwing a big bait for almost 8 months straight this last summer, from muskie fishing in July straight into pike fishing in Spain, into Murray cod fishing, and then Barra, and then back home to target pre-spawn largemouth. Like I never got a break, man. And even though I did my best to stay in shape and fit, like I started feeling the effects of throwing these things all day, every day, multiple days a week. And it's a wonder to me that some of these guys can even fish at all, because like they're just not in shape. Like these are big heavy baits, the rods and reels are heavier, and you've got to have like this level of physicality to properly present a fake piece of plastic to fool these hard to fool fish. And if and I just don't think it's something that enough of the anglers that follow anybody pay attention to. But you see guys that are athletic. Look at Carl Jochimson, he's in my circle, but Aaron Martin stays fit. Iconelli stays fit. Guy John Cruz looks like he's super jacked. And those guys got to have an advantage over the guys that can barely get in and out of their boats.
Yeah, the aspect that you don't have to throw up 300 on the bench press, but you need your body to be. I want to fish until I'm in my 80s or 90s. As long as I can. And I've had days out there, even if I haven't been, like my shoulder starts to, usually it's the little things. It's your lower back, your elbow, your shoulder. I had elbow issues.
I'm starting to feel a lot of strain and fatigue in my forearms now.
And that doesn't, you can bench press all day, in the gym and do some, but it's usually the smaller, it's rotator cuff stuff, core stuff.
Right?
If you see me, I sit in a physio ball, and that's why it probably looks weird when I'm like moving. It looks like I'm bouncing, but I think not only for fishing but for life, just to just to have a healthier lifestyle and incorporate things that's good for the flexibility, because we're forward. Everything is forward, so being able to stretch, open up the body back. I did yoga. I got into yoga the past few years, and that's really helped my back. Just the stretch in yoga, but it's stretching for the most part, stretching and breathing.
Can you give us a couple of easy pointers, especially for the guys that are at the very basic start of getting into fishing shape? And I'm not just talking about big baits. Like, dude, I wear myself out throwing a jerk bait more than anything.
Yeah. Right. The shoulder move. I think flexibility. Number one, I think just getting the flexibility. You don't need to have marathon lungs, to be able to fish, but you just need to be able to move. And we're on an unstable, unless you're shore fishing, the whole day you're on an unstable platform. The platform is moving like this, or it's moving like this. If you're in the ocean, this is happening all day, and you're standing up there, and your body knows to be upright no matter what's happening down here. You're pretty much upright, and you're twisting. And if you're in the trolling motor, you got one foot up. If you look at it's amazing just to be able to make the physical movements of the human body biomechanically in a boat, to be able to just be on the trolling motor in waves and then just see something and cast a bait out like this and catch a fish is just incredible. So I think, the move, anything, rotation, anything you can do, rotation, basic core stuff, like plank, side race, taking a little med ball, or yesterday I got a rock. I just went around and found a rock since all the gyms are closed, and I take the rock and twist. So anything with rotation and especially stretching the front of your hips and your back is really going to be helpful, without getting into, too many specifics of that. And then number one, above all that, hydration and keeping face buff, keeping out of the sun, skin cancer, especially my dad's generation. they're getting cut. My uncle has a big chunk that did get cut out of his face, and then my dad too. Like all the problems with skin cancer, um, that's part of it. That's part of staying healthy is keeping covered up, whether it's a face buff. I know you wear gloves, the face buff,
Yeah.
and then some sunscreen as much as you can.
Absolutely, those are great tips, man. Hopefully, maybe we can jump into some fishing-specific strengthening and stretching exercises in the future through the Big Bell
Yeah.
Streams channel. I think that'd be something really helpful.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay, let's plan on doing some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me at the end of this, man, Troy, when someone's reading your autobiography, right, and I'm getting towards the end of the chapters, like, what is Troy Lindner's legacy going to be like? Like, what do you want people to remember?
Oh my gosh, my leg. I don't know. I'm still. I think just working on that. As you get older, you start to think about that.
Yep.
And boy, my leg. Trying to get more people. Some of the legacy. It's interesting. Because it's almost like a selfish thing to. I want to inspire people to do. It's almost like a selfish thing. Oh, I hope that a lot of people look at me, fish, and inspire and follow, and I hope that that people see what I'm doing, or a little in it, and it just maybe helps them want to do something else or something a little bit different. If it's traveling, so for the things I do is fishing for different fish, maybe just starting to get into exercise a little bit more, and when they look at the things that I've done over my life, maybe in another 30 years, I don't know what's ahead. Nobody knows, especially this time. I could be gone next year. I could be gone in 10 years. So, every day I wake up, especially now, there's not a lot of good news out there. So, staying as healthy as I can, which I've tried to do for the last, gosh, how many years have I been working at? 25 plus years. I think fitness and fishing are my two passions. I think people that have followed, if I can inspire people or help people, to catch more fish and maybe to get out and explore the world, both locally and regionally, I think I've done a good job, and to my future son or daughter that are still yet, hopefully, that I can leave, whatever left behind to them. So,
pressure, Ann.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's so rad. Yeah, I got some catching up to do on watching your channel. I just subscribed to it from my personal channel here, man. So keep up the good work.
I just have a few, a lot of my things, a lot of my travel things, like my Instagram stories. When I travel, I put a lot up on that. Obviously, those disappear and some of the short videos and things. But I have so much content from last fall, from Asia, actually even the time before that, to China, fishing in Shanghai. I haven't posted the scorpion that I ate yet. I didn't know. I waited till I went to a night market. I went to this night market in Thailand. I ate a scorpion. It's a fried scorpion. It was like a big one. It wasn't that bad.
Anything fried has got to be good, right?
Yeah. I just they cut the stinger off and but some of the other videos that I want now that I'm kind of have time to get those up. I only got a dozen on there, so I want to put a few other ones on there. And the Ontario Experience YouTube page, you can see some of the full length shows are there, and hopefully that border will be opened up. Hopefully by June 1st or July 1st, it will be open sometime. In Ontario, if you're in the Midwest, it's such a great place. It's hard to in the United States to go somewhere. You can go to the Rockies or the mountains, to get somewhere really secluded just to be away from everything, to go to a flying adventure, or even a drive over the border and just drive a couple hours over the border. And it's like it's like you're in another country, obviously are, but it's like you're in another place on planet Earth that's just so quiet. And it's just an amazing place because of all the fishing that's there, for walleye and bass. And it's a cool place, and it's affordable, especially with a lot of the restrictions on travel, I think, in the next year, like flying and all that, if you can drive somewhere, and I think, anywhere you can drive to And with gas prices low right now, if the border opens up, it'd be a mini kind of a nice getaway,
And really,
without spending a lot of money.
And there's steps to this, right? Like, even for me, like, I never left the Southern California bubble. So even going up to the Bay Area, to the Delta was an adventure. The Central Coast was an adventure. Even San Diego, 2 hours south, was an adventure and out of my comfort zone. To the river, 4 hours east, like, you can start somewhere, but explore and experience things. And then as you get more comfortable and more confident and more experienced, you can go to, like, the Lake of the Woods like I did and find myself, like, surrounded by grebes, this gnarly, beautiful sunset at like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
With this super red, purple sky, and I'm Snapchatting "Wish You Were Here" to like 15 girls on Snapchat at the same time, and I totally got called out by like 3 of them. Like, you just sent this to everybody. It's like, maybe, no, I would never do that. But it's just wild how what you can experience if you're willing to just go for it, man, and just have some balls.
Yeah, the local. That's why, like kind of to what I said before, both locally and abroad, and you can explore if you go to the same few lakes. Like in Southern California, there's so much of the Colorado River. You go from Blythe up to Parker. You just shore fish. I mean, you get in your car and just go shore fish. I mean, there's big bluegill, there's big carp, big bass, and there's going to be nobody around, and you can just drive, pull over, jump out, and there's no gate fees, there's no park fees there, that we have in California to go fish and explore, and it's a lot of and there's so much to it that I also want to that I haven't fished, and actually if you skip Lake Havasu, not Lake, I guess below Laughlin, down to Lake Havasu, and then below Parker, like shore fishing, because it narrows down, and that's a good area. And in the Midwest, there's too many people that are close to Canada and drive over. I mean, you can just camp out somewhere. There's so many lakes just to go shore fish, pull your boat in. You don't have to pay fees.
Bring the bug spray.
And like I said, like to go a little bit further, maybe for people in Arizona, so go up to Colorado, go up there and go get some walleye, or go up experience some trout fishing, and it's a 5-hour, 6-hour, maybe a 3/4 day drive, and go up and experience things on a budget. You can do it on a budget and just go for these amazing fishing adventures anywhere in the USA. I've never fished in the Appalachians. I imagine there's some cool trout stuff that's got to be going on back there. That's probably really close to a lot of those major cities.
Yeah, I think the point is, like, your backyard is somebody else's dream destination. Like, think about that.
Yeah, that's true.
We all kind of get complacent, and I didn't appreciate California for all its resources and beauty and opportunity until I was gone and stuck in the Midwest or Texas, and I was like, man, I miss the mountains of California. I miss the beaches. I miss the whatever. And it took some new perspective for me to understand and appreciate that. So, anyways, brother, man, just like that, an hour is gone, and
that went by quick.
Podcast episode number 11 is pretty much a wrap. So, I want to first thank you for coming on here. Where can the audience follow you? Where should they follow you? What should they come to expect from you for the rest of 2020?
My Instagram, on the socials, my Instagram, Troy Lindner, YouTube, Troy Lindner, and Facebook, Troy Lindner Fishing, and then also on Angling Buzz. I'll be doing some things on Angling Buzz, and that's also on Instagram, YouTube, and then I'll be airing on Fox Sports North, Fox Sports Wisconsin this summer, doing some things on that, and then hopefully be back up to Canada late summer for the Ontario experience.
Okay.
And everybody, be safe. You go out, enjoy the outdoors, keep your distance, and especially if you're catching them too, make sure they stay away, not only for your health, but when catching your fish.
That's right.
That rod pattern.
Absolutely, and I hope to be able to document more of the work that your dad and your uncle and your cousins have already done in the future when those opportunities come, and looking forward to hopefully having you contribute some content directly to the Big Bass Streams channel as well.
Absolutely.
And,
I look forward to that as well. And we need we get some big walleye dream. What you've done in big, big bass streams. It's not only bass. I mean, it's everything. The principle, it's everything.
Dude, that one I hooked. I can't explain to people how big that walleye was on that 210 that I was ripping for the muskies.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah,
Dude, honestly, came up. You saw it. I hooked it right underneath you. Like, how big was that walleye?
It was probably a high 20 pushing 30. I mean, all those walleye were, they're 26 inch to above everything we got there.
Yeah.
And just to show you, and it hit a big swim bait, just to show you, walleye can eat a big bait. They eat perch. They eat big perch. They can eat a pretty good meal when they want to, and they can move fast.
Dude, I was mind blown because it swiped at it once. I thought it was a pike. It was so freaking fast, and then the second time it came and just smashed it out of nowhere again. Whole new respect for that fish. If we can figure that bite out, that'd be a lot of fun to document.
Yeah.
So anyways, appreciate everybody that's tuned in for this broadcast and this podcast. Unfortunately, it wasn't much of a Q&A, but stay tuned to the channel, both here on my personal and the Big Bass Streams channel and Troy's channel. Subscribe to all three. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss these, because we also, give back to our culture, the Big Bass Streams culture. So as always, I'm going to randomly select the winner of this care package, courtesy of Ben at the Hookup Tackle, who sponsored this episode of the podcast. I will announce it on my personal Instagram page and my story. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for all the support, and hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday in a safe, responsible manner. Go out fishing if you can, and aim high, dream big, and we'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Thanks again,
thank
Troy.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Oh, man. This was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Fishing. Can you believe it?
It went by quick, fast without even Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. Q&A makes it crazy.
No fall blast off, trying to get some cast off. Doing this here for years, get my pass on. Straight mask on, putting in work. Step back, got me focused, never settle.